Hi, this is Evan Hyde with Coking.com, and I am back with our I Spy a Coker series, where we analyze 3 different pictures of cokers from around the world and see what we can spy from afar. So without further ado, let's dive right in and see what we got for today. So let's zoom in on this little picture here. What do we got? So we clearly have a 2-drum coker with a sort of monolithic derrick structure that we saw previously. One of the things that you see, kind of if you move down on the photo a little bit, is that this area on the bottom looks an awful lot like the heater, but we don't see any stack coming out of it. That's crazy. Who's seen a furnace without a stack? Well, it turns out that this particular plant has the style where all of the flue gases come out of the stack, go through the air preheater, and go somewhere else to be captured and collected separately. I wonder if this is something that's going to gain popularity with this new environmental rules that we have coming. Common commingling of stacks benefit economies of scale for carbon sequestration and capture. I don't know, but here's a good example of a coker. What else can we learn by looking at the very edge of this photo? If you notice, it looks like a 4-pass furnace. And if you look really carefully, you can see the edges of the furnace firebox have a characteristic trapezoidal shape. And for those of you who have been around cokers as long as I have, you know that there is one licensor who is characteristically associated with the trapezoidal fired furnaces. I won't mention them by name, but you know who you are, and if you would like to mention them in the comments, you're welcome to do so. But this style of furnace shows a trapezoidal fired furnace. What else we got that's kind of unique in this particular layout? There is the fractionator over to the side here, not too far away from the structure. We'll talk about that in a second. With another photo, PSV kind of hanging out here over the side. That's sort of a weird layout for a PSV. Not so sure what that's doing over there. We also notice that there are a variety of platforms at different elevations for different accessibility. That's nice, up in the derrick structure. And I think that's probably about all I have to say about this photo today. But let's move on to our next photo. All right, so our next photo is a 2-drum coker followed by a 2-drum coker. I bring this to our attention today because I feel like these are reasonably far apart, indicating that they were either built separately at different time periods, but they look nearly identical. So it just goes to show you that you really don't need to have your 4-drum cokers side by side if for some reason your space constraints dictate that. I also want to bring this picture to your attention because it looks like the heaters, there's 2 stacks for 2 drums, which is weird. So normally it's 1 stack for 2 drums, but this is 2 stacks for 2 drums. So not so sure what's going on there. Maybe it's you know, some sort of 2 furnace situation for 1 drum pair, or if they just happen to have 2 independent stacks, or it's possibly one of these online pigging style designs where each of the furnaces can be separated individually. However, I'm going to go ahead and guess by the age of the structure and the overall appearance of the unit that it is probably not one of the online pigging designs, because those are fairly new. Over to the right side of the photo, I think it's interesting. This is a nice example of a coke storage barn. We like to keep our coke captured inside so that it doesn't blow around and is easy to keep wet and ready to be transported off-site. So this is a nice example of a coke storage barn, not too terribly far away from the coker unit itself. So our last photo for today is interesting. You'll notice that it's right along the water here, and the water is a characteristic, very pretty blue color, I can say from first-hand experience. This particular coker is located in a very beautiful spot in the world, and they've taken extraordinary measures to kind of keep that water as clean as possible. And you'll notice that in particular with their coke handling system right here. So you see the 4-drum coker off in the distance, and we'll talk about that in a minute. But I'd like to bring your attention to the coke handling and storage system initially in the foreground. So you see this initial conveyor tube moving from the coker unit area over, turning over, and going into this giant dome. Inside this dome sits a reclaimer, and this dome has this characteristic shape because it gets very windy in this part of the world, and this is a very strong wind resistance style of design. So the conveyor belts are also fully enclosed and have dust gathering equipment at the corners, so it keeps all the nice coke dust enclosed in this system. So this is a fully enclosed conveyor system. And then leaving the coke storage area, moving off to what we can assume is the loadout for the port where the coke is transported off-site, is again a fully enclosed conveyor belt moving away. I also like to bring the attention that these angles are relatively shallow. The shallower the angles, the better for a overall transport effectiveness of the coker. If it gets a little bit too steep, sometimes you can have difficulties. So again, this is a 4-drum unit, 2 and 2. Can't quite see the coke pit very well over here. You can see dual egress pathways on both sides of the structure. That's something we always like to see. And there's the fractionator. So this brings us to the end of today's I Spy a Coker series. Hopefully you enjoyed it. It's always fun for me to look over these old photos and see what I can spy from afar and bring back some fond memories. So thanks for joining me. I'm Evan Hyde with Coking.com and look forward to the next in our series. Thanks.